I still can't believe what I saw that day. I had just come back from a long day at work, exhausted and ready to spend some quiet time with my dog, Max. He's not just a pet, he's my buddy, my companion through thick and thin. He's also sick, and I've been giving him medicine every day to keep his condition from getting worse. But when I walked into my house that afternoon, everything changed. I opened the door to find the unmistakable sight of Karen, the HOA president, standing in my living room, rifling through my things. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't even know how she got in, but there she was, rummaging through the drawers where I kept Max's medication. Her eyes flickered toward me, and I could tell she was startled, but her face quickly twisted into that smug, confident expression I had come to despise. She didn't seem scared at all. "What do you think you're doing?" I shouted, my voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and anger. She didn't even flinch. She just raised one hand, nonchalantly holding up the pill bottle she'd just taken from the drawer. "Oh, just checking on your pet's meds. I thought it was about time someone made sure you're not neglecting your responsibilities," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. The audacity! This woman, who was always sticking her nose in everyone's business, had the nerve to invade my home and steal my dog's medication. She didn't know Max was sick. She didn't know how important these pills were to his survival. I rushed toward her, but she pulled the bottle away, holding it just out of my reach. "You've been warned before, she continued, as if she was doing me a favor. "I've been getting complaints about your irresponsible pet ownership." I was beyond furious. Not only was she violating my privacy, but she was doing it under the guise of protecting the neighborhood from my recklessness. In that moment, everything I had tolerated about her, the petty fines, the endless rules, the way she thought she could control every little aspect of my life, came rushing back, and I couldn't hold back anymore. I demanded she leave, but she just smirked and held her ground. "I'll be taking this with me," she said, and I could see that she was already planning to make my life a living hell, just like she always did with others who didn't follow the rules. But as she started to walk away, I did something I never thought I would. I shouted the one thing I knew would rattle her. "You might want to think twice about this. My neighbor is a judge." Her eyes went wide. I could see the gears in her mind turning, but by then it was too late. I wasn't just some regular homeowner she could push around. I had an ally, a powerful one. And Karen had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. But that was just the beginning. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand who we are and why this mattered so much. My name is Emily Parker, I'm 32, and Max isn't just a dog, he's my family. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood that seems perfect on the surface, but anyone who's dealt with HOA politics knows it's anything but. Our community is run by people who think they're above the law, people who get a thrill from controlling others, and for me, that person is Karen. Max has always been a bit fragile. He's a golden retriever mix with a sensitive stomach and a heart condition that makes him prone to sudden episodes. I've spent years managing his health, scheduling vet visits, giving him the right medication, and making sure he has a stable, happy life. He's more than a pet. He's a reminder of why I never gave up, even after some of the hardest years of my life. Life hasn't been easy for our little family. My husband, Mark, works long hours as an EMT, and between him and me, we've managed to keep Max healthy despite everything. We've always been careful, always responsible, and always trying to follow the rules, especially in a neighborhood where someone like Karen lurks around, looking for reasons to fine, shame, or humiliate you. Karen, on the other hand, has lived here for over a decade. She owns one of the largest homes in the community and has been the HOA president for the last 5 years. From the moment she got into power, it seemed like she thrived on control. She had a reputation for arrogance, for throwing her weight around, and for making people feel powerless. I had witnessed her antics before. Neighbors receiving ridiculous fines for unapproved landscaping, pets being accused of disturbing the peace, and even senior citizens being bullied over trivial infractions. But nothing prepared me for what she was capable of when she turned her attention to me. Max had been having a rough week. His vet had just prescribed a new medicine that was vital for his heart condition. Every morning and evening, I carefully measured his dosage and administered it with precision. Those pills weren't just medication, they were his lifeline. And yet, somehow, Karen had gotten wind of it. I still don't know how she found out, but I knew one thing. She wasn't here to check on my responsibilities. She was here to assert control, to make me feel small, to ruin my peace of mind. We moved to this neighborhood because we wanted safety, community, and stability. But with Karen in charge, even our home didn't feel safe anymore. I remember the first confrontation vividly. She had sent a passive-aggressive letter about our mailbox, claiming it was not in compliance with HOA standards. I tried to reason with her, politely explaining that it met every requirement, but she dismissed me. From that moment, I realized that arguing with Karen was useless. She didn't care about facts, rules, or fairness, only power and intimidation. And yet there was a silver lining. My next-door neighbor, Mr. Robert Hayes, is a retired judge. He's seen the worst of human arrogance and entitlement and has spent his life upholding justice. Most people in the neighborhood respect him quietly, but Karen underestimated him. She had no idea what kind of ally I had right next door. He's a man of integrity, quick-witted, and not someone who can be bullied or manipulated. Little did Karen know that the moment she crossed into my home, taking something that mattered deeply to me and Max, she had triggered something far bigger than a mere confrontation. I had lived cautiously for years, always avoiding trouble, always following the rules, but Karen had pushed me to the edge. And now, with Max's health on the line, there was no turning back. That afternoon, as I tried to retrieve the medicine from her, I felt a surge of fear mixed with determination. Max was trembling on the floor, his big brown eyes filled with confusion. He didn't understand why the one person who cared for him so much was shouting, or why a stranger was holding the key to his survival. "Emily, please," I whispered, as if he could sense the danger. And then I remembered something my father had always told me. Sometimes you have to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. I wasn't just fighting for Max. I was fighting for the principle that no entitled, arrogant person like Karen could ever treat me, my home, or my family this way again. But Karen had no idea what was coming next. She thought this was her game, her power to wield. She thought she could get away with stealing medication and threatening a sick dog's life. She had no idea that the real battle was just about to begin. And yet, despite my fear and anger, I had to play it carefully. One wrong move, one escalation without proof, and I could be seen as the aggressive neighbor instead of the victim. This is the world Karen thrived in, the world of appearances, manipulation, and petty dominance. But I wasn't going to let her win. But that was just the beginning. After that day, I realized Karen wasn't just an overbearing neighbor, she was a predator in HOA clothing. She had a knack for finding ways to make life miserable for anyone who dared defy her. It started small, almost imperceptibly, but escalated quickly once she realized I wouldn't cower. The very next morning, I found a notice slipped under my door, stamped with HOA seal. It accused me of neglectful pet care and endangering neighborhood safety because Max had apparently been seen outside my yard without a leash. I was stunned. Max had only stepped into the backyard while I supervised him, yet Karen had twisted the truth into a weapon. The note ended with her signature flourish. "Immediate fines will apply if the behavior continues." I tried to reason with her over email, keeping my tone polite, factual, and calm. I reminded her that Max's medical needs were being met, and that the observation she cited was misinterpreted. Her reply was chilling in its arrogance. "I see you're ignoring the warnings. Don't forget, I watch this neighborhood closely. We all must follow the rules." It was clear. Karen wasn't interested in facts. She wanted control, fear, and humiliation. Then came the petty invasions of privacy. I'd go outside to water my plants, and she'd appear across the street, glaring as if waiting for me to mess up. She'd peer into my windows under the guise of community safety checks, often standing there long enough for me to feel uncomfortable and watched. Every time I stepped out, I felt like I was under a microscope. My own home, my sanctuary, was now a stage for her manipulation. One particularly cold morning, I noticed that Max's pill bottle was missing again. My heart sank as I searched the house frantically. That's when I discovered that Karen had left a threatening note this time, clipped to the kitchen counter. If you think you can hide things from me, think again. I know everything about this house, and your little secrets won't stay hidden for long. I felt trapped. It wasn't just about stolen medicine anymore, it was psychological warfare. Karen had perfected the art of intimidation. She relished it, I was certain of that. Every glance, every note, every accusation was designed to make me question my own sanity. I confided in Mark, my husband, that evening. She's obsessed, I said, my hands shaking as I showed him a note. It's not just about Max. She wants to control everything me, this house, even my neighbors. Mark put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Emily, we'll handle this. We'll be smart. We won't let her break us. But even Mark's reassurance couldn't calm my growing anxiety. Max needed his medicine, and Karen's obsession was now a direct threat to his life. I began to notice patterns, Karen watching, timing her visits, always showing up when I had appointments or errands. She seemed to know my schedule better than I did. Then came the escalation I didn't see coming. During a routine morning walk, Karen confronted me in the neighborhood. She was dressed immaculately, as always, sunglasses perched on her nose like a shield against the world. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet morning air. I've been hearing things about your dog's behavior, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. It's unacceptable. You need to correct it immediately or the HOA will step in. I tried to stand my ground. Max is fine. He's sick, yes, but I take care of him. Your accusations are baseless. She smirked, circling me like a predator. Accusations? I call them observations. You think rules don't apply to you? Think again. This neighborhood has standards. You will comply. By now, I was furious, but I had to remain calm. A scene in public would only give her ammo. So I walked away, Max in tow, my heart pounding. But as I returned home, I found that Karen had posted yet another note on my door. This is your final warning. Fail to comply, and you will face consequences. I was trapped in a cycle of harassment that seemed endless. Every day brought a new challenge, a new accusation, a new attempt to dominate me. And Max, my little loyal friend, was caught in the crossfire. The stakes were higher than ever. I confided in my neighbor, Judge Hayes, that night. Robert, I said, my voice trembling, she's taken too far. Max, she's putting him at risk. I don't know what to do. The HOA won't help. No one will help. He listened quietly, nodding. Emily, he said finally, Karen is playing a game she thinks she can win, but she doesn't know who she's dealing with. Let me handle it. Even with this glimmer of hope, fear and anxiety consumed me. Every trip to the vet, every delivery, every visitor was now a potential battlefield. Karen's obsession had moved beyond petty rules. It had become malicious and dangerous. And I knew, deep down, that she would stop at nothing until she had crushed me completely. But just as I thought things couldn't get worse, she did something that made my blood run cold. She snatched Max's medicine from my doorstep, leaving behind a mocking note. I told you I know everything. Consider this a lesson in obedience. I stared at the empty spot where the bottle had been. Max whimpered softly, sensing the danger he was in. Rage, fear, and despair collided inside me. Karen wasn't just petty, she was reckless and cruel, and she had crossed a line I could never ignore. But little did Karen know, she had just triggered a chain of events that would backfire spectacularly. I had an ally, someone with the power to expose her arrogance and entitlement, someone who could turn the tables in ways she would never see coming. And that was when I realized this wasn't just about Max anymore. This was about justice. But that was just the beginning. By now, it was clear that Karen wasn't just a nuisance, she had become a threat, and the HOA was actively protecting her. Every time I tried to report her behavior, the system seemed rigged against me. Complaints vanished into thin air. Emails were lost. Board meetings conveniently excluded discussion of harassment. It was like the entire HOA existed solely to shield her arrogance. I remember sitting in my living room one evening, Max curled beside me, feeling utterly powerless. I had tried reasoning, pleading, documenting everything meticulously, dates, times, notes, even photographs, but nothing worked. The HOA dismissed every piece of evidence. They treated me as the problem neighbor while Karen continued her campaign of control. One of the worst moments came when I finally brought video proof of her taking Max's medicine from the doorstep. I compiled everything, including timestamps and clear footage showing her entering my property without permission. I thought, surely this will change things. But when I submitted it to the HOA, their response shocked me. The matter has been reviewed and no action will be taken. The HOA operates in accordance with community guidelines and all residents are expected to comply. I stared at the email, my hands trembling. Compliance? Threatening a sick dog's life is compliance now? It felt like the world had turned upside down. The people who were supposed to protect the community were now actively defending a bully. And Max, my precious Max, was caught in the middle, his health at risk. I remember breaking down in tears that night. Why isn't anyone doing anything? He's just a dog. He hasn't done anything to anyone. Mark hugged me tightly, whispering, "We'll find a way, Emily. Don't give up yet." But the injustice didn't stop there. Karen escalated again, now using the HOA's backing as a shield. She sent letters to the community falsely accusing me of neglect and endangerment, spreading lies that made me feel humiliated and unsafe in my own home. Neighbors began looking at me differently. Some were afraid to speak up for me, afraid of Karen's wrath. It was infuriating seeing the system side with someone so obviously cruel. I began to realize that rules and regulations could protect the guilty while punishing the innocent, and that realization hit me hard. Every attempt I made to assert my rights was twisted into aggression, while Karen's entitlement made her untouchable. Max, sensing my stress, began hiding under furniture, trembling more often. I couldn't blame him. He felt the tension too. Every pill he missed, every day without his medicine, felt like a ticking clock. The injustice of it all was suffocating. How could one person's arrogance be shielded by a system that's supposed to protect the community? I decided I needed an ally outside the HOA, someone with real authority. That's when I thought of Judge Hayes, my next-door neighbor. I had mentioned him earlier, but I hadn't realized just how much his presence could change everything. He wasn't just any neighbor. He had years of experience seeing entitlement and corruption firsthand. The next day, I went to him desperate. "Robert," I said, my voice shaking, "the HOA, they're protecting her. She's stolen Max's medicine, she's threatening me, and nobody will stop her. I don't know what to do." He listened quietly, then nodded. "Emily, this is serious. But the good news is Karen underestimated you. And she definitely underestimated me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Someone who understood the law, someone who could see the injustice for what it was ready to step in. But Karen would soon find out that playing with people she thinks are powerless is the biggest mistake she could make. I had endured threats, harassment, and the terrifying helplessness of seeing the system fail. I had felt powerless, humiliated, and trapped. But the tide was about to turn, and Karen had no idea what was coming next. But that was just the beginning. That night, Judge Hayes came over after dinner, his expression serious but calm. He carried a folder, thick with documents, and sat down at my kitchen table. Max lay at my feet, sensing the tension in the room. "Emily," he said, "Karen thinks she's untouchable. She's arrogant, entitled, and believes the HOA will always protect her. But arrogance blinds people. And right now, she's about to make a very big mistake." I looked at him, heart pounding. What can we do? I can't take her on by myself. I've tried everything." He smiled faintly, a glimmer of reassurance in his eyes. "You don't have to. We're going to turn her own behavior against her. And we're going to do it carefully, legally, and permanently. First step, evidence. Every note, every video, every stolen item, everything she's done to you and Max is documented. We have it all. And with this, we're going to expose her in a way the HOA and the law cannot ignore. I felt a rush of hope mixed with fear. Could this really work? Karen had always seemed one step ahead, but Judge Hayes had a plan that seemed foolproof. Over the next few days, we executed the first phase. I continued to act normally, while Judge Hayes quietly reached out to HOA board members individually, using the documentation to expose Karen's repeated violations. But he didn't stop there. He contacted local authorities, detailing not only the theft of Max's medicine, but also Karen's harassment and intimidation. Then came the clever part. We discovered that Karen had a pattern of public displays of power, often making threats while claiming community authority. Judge Hayes advised me to record her interactions discreetly, legally, on my phone. Within a week, we had irrefutable proof of her arrogance, intimidation, and illegal actions. Karen, confident as ever, had no idea she was being set up. On a sunny afternoon, she strutted onto my porch, sunglasses on, ready to deliver yet another lecture. "I see you still don't understand your responsibilities," she sneered. "One more slip and you'll regret it." I stayed calm, hiding my phone in my hand, recording every word. Judge Hayes, sitting across the street, watched silently from a safe distance. This time, Karen's overconfidence was her downfall. Every threat, every smug smile, every arrogant comment was captured in high-definition video. By the end of the week, Judge Hayes compiled everything into a formal legal package, including the stolen medicine incident, her harassment, and the video recordings. He prepared letters for the HOA, local authorities, and even the press if necessary. The twist? Karen believed she had total control. She thought she could bully, intimidate, and manipulate with impunity. But she had underestimated two things: my resilience and the fact that my neighbor was a respected judge who knew exactly how to turn the law in my favor. The night before we presented the evidence, I felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. I looked at Max, who wagged his tail weakly, and whispered, "Hang in there, buddy. Tomorrow this ends." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Judge Hayes reminded me gently, "Remember, Emily, the goal isn't just to punish Karen, it's to ensure she can't hurt you or anyone else again. Justice, not revenge, is our goal. But make no mistake, when she sees what's coming, she will realize that her arrogance has consequences." The next morning, we delivered the evidence package to the HOA board in person. Karen was there, of course, ready to flaunt her self-perceived power. But this time, she didn't know what was waiting for her. The moment the board opened the folder, their faces changed. Shock, disbelief, and finally, stern judgment replaced the smug confidence Karen had carried for months. I stood silently, Max at my feet, as Karen's empire of arrogance crumbled in real time. She sputtered, tried to argue, tried to shift blame, but it was futile. Every word, every act, every violation was meticulously documented and undeniable. It was a turning point. The twisted game Karen had been playing was about to end. But that was just the beginning. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. Karen arrived at the HOA meeting room with her usual air of superiority, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She was dressed to intimidate, as always, carrying herself like a queen in a court of her own making. But this time, the room felt different. The tension was palpable. For the first time in months, she wasn't in control. Judge Hayes and I arrived quietly, files in hand. I felt Max tugging gently at my sleeve, as if he knew something important was about to happen. The board members sat with a seriousness that Karen had never seen before, their eyes fixed on the thick stack of evidence Judge Hayes had prepared. As Karen began her usual diatribe, pointing fingers, using her entitlement as armor, Judge Hayes calmly interrupted. "The board and I have reviewed documented evidence that spans weeks of harassment, theft, and intimidation directed at Emily and her dog, Max." His voice was steady, commanding, impossible to ignore. "What you have done, Karen, is not only morally reprehensible but legally punishable." Karen's face twisted in disbelief. I don't understand. I've done nothing wrong. The HOA protects me. You can't. That ends today," Judge Hayes said firmly, laying down the video recordings, medical records, and detailed logs of her behavior on the table. Every word, every action she had taken was there in black and white, impossible to deny. I felt my heart pounding as Karen's arrogance began to crumble. She tried to bluster, to deflect, but the evidence was overwhelming. The board members, usually intimidated by her, now leaned forward, asking questions, demanding explanations, and reading the proof with their own eyes. Then, one of the board members, a quiet woman who had always seemed neutral, spoke up. "Karen, these actions are serious. Stealing medication from a pet is criminal. Harassing a neighbor and attempting to manipulate community rules is unacceptable. This is beyond HOA authority. This requires legal action." Karen's face turned red. You can't do this." "I've done nothing wrong," she screamed, her voice cracking under the pressure. Judge Hayes stood, his presence commanding. "Karen, ignorance is no excuse. You were warned repeatedly. You were given multiple opportunities to stop. And yet, you chose to continue this harassment. You will face consequences not only from the HOA, but from the legal system for endangering a pet's health and threatening your neighbor." At that moment, Karen realized she had no allies left. The entire room, including neighbors who had previously avoided confrontation, watched silently as her empire of arrogance collapsed. Every smear campaign she had attempted, every act of intimidation, now worked against her. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Karen, this is my home, my family, and my dog. You tried to control us, threaten us, and harm my dog for your own amusement. But no more. Today, justice is here, and Max will be safe from you." Max barked once, almost as if echoing my words, and the tension in the room seemed to intensify. Karen tried to speak again, but her voice was weak, trembling. She had no power here, not anymore. The HOA board, under Judge Hayes' guidance, made their decision. Karen would face immediate suspension from any HOA duties, fines for her harassment, and a formal warning that any further actions would involve local law enforcement. Additionally, the stolen medicine incident was referred to the authorities for potential criminal charges. As Karen realized the consequences she faced, she tried to lash out, pointing fingers, shouting threats, and attempting to intimidate once more. But the room ignored her, the authority of the law, and the moral weight of justice silencing her arrogance. Judge Hayes leaned over and whispered to me, "This is it, Emily. She won't bother you again." Karen left that room defeated, her smug confidence shattered. The neighbors whispered among themselves, many coming up to apologize for not standing up sooner. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a mixture of relief, triumph, and emotional exhaustion. Later, as we returned home, I held Max close. "We did it, buddy," I whispered. "She can't touch us anymore. You're safe." Max licked my face, sensing the relief and victory I felt. But the climax wasn't just about Karen's downfall. It was about reclaiming control over my own life, standing up against injustice, and knowing that courage, patience, and a smart plan could defeat even the most arrogant oppressor. In the weeks following, the HOA began to change its policies, ensuring that no other resident could be bullied under the guise of community rules. Karen's name became a cautionary tale, whispered among neighbors as a lesson in humility and accountability. Judge Hayes, ever the wise mentor, smiled at me one evening as we watched Max play in the yard. "Remember, Emily," he said, "people like Karen always think they are untouchable, but truth, evidence, and courage always catch up. Justice doesn't fail those who fight for it correctly." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely, knowing that the danger had passed. Karen had been powerful, arrogant, and cruel, but she had underestimated the resilience and cleverness of a determined neighbor and a loyal friend. That day, Max got his medicine, my home regained peace, and I realized that standing up for what's right sometimes requires patience, smart allies, and unwavering courage. But even as Karen faded from our lives, the memory of her cruelty reminded me to never allow fear or intimidation to rule my world. And that lesson, more than anything, would stay with me forever. The sun was setting over our neighborhood, casting a warm golden glow across the yard. Max lay lazily on the grass, finally relaxed, his medicine safely administered, his health restored. I sat beside him, feeling a calm I hadn't experienced in months. The nightmare with Karen was over, but the lessons it left behind were unforgettable. I thought back to all the fear and frustration, the threats, the stolen medicine, the sleepless nights, and realized that every moment had prepared me for this victory. Karen's arrogance had blinded her to one undeniable truth: you can't bully someone who refuses to be defeated. And with the right allies, even the most powerful, hate-filled person can be stopped. Judge Hayes had become more than a neighbor. He had become a guide, showing me that patience, preparation, and courage were more powerful than brute intimidation. Emily, he said the day after Karen's downfall, justice isn't always fast. Sometimes it's meticulous, calculated, but it's always satisfying when done right. I smiled at him, thinking of the countless times I had doubted myself, wondering if Karen would ever be stopped. Now, standing victorious, I understood that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting in spite of it. The HOA began enforcing stricter rules, ensuring no resident could abuse their power under the guise of community authority. Karen's name became a cautionary tale, whispered as an example of what happens when arrogance meets accountability. And while she tried to maintain her social facade, everyone could see the cracks. The once feared HOA queen was now a shadow of her former self, powerless and publicly exposed. For me, the greatest victory wasn't just the defeat of Karen. It was reclaiming my home, my peace, and my dignity. Every night, as I tucked Max into bed, I felt a profound gratitude that justice had been served. I had faced fear head-on, and I had won not just for myself, but for my loyal companion and for anyone who might face a bully like Karen in the future. The ordeal also strengthened my relationships with my neighbors. Many came forward, apologizing for not acting sooner, offering support, and promising to stand up against injustice. A sense of community, once fractured by fear and manipulation, slowly began to heal. Together, we created an environment where respect and fairness mattered more than arrogance and entitlement. Looking back, I realized that every challenge Karen threw at me was an opportunity to grow stronger. I had learned the importance of documenting wrongs, seeking the right allies, and never underestimating the power of the law. Courage, intelligence, and resilience had turned the tables, and the result was undeniable: justice, peace, and restored dignity. One evening, as I watched Max chase butterflies in the yard, I whispered softly, "We made it, buddy. You're safe. We're safe." And in that moment, I understood that standing up for what is right isn't just about winning a battle. It's about protecting what you love, teaching others about fairness, and proving that even the smallest voice can be heard when backed by truth and determination. Karen had underestimated me. She had underestimated the loyalty of a neighbor who cared, the courage of a determined woman, and the power of standing up for justice. She had assumed that arrogance and entitlement could overpower integrity, and she was wrong. Completely wrong. The moral was clear. No matter how powerful or entitled someone seems, integrity, preparation, and courage will always prevail over arrogance, theft, and cruelty. As night fell and stars dotted the sky, I felt a sense of closure I had never thought possible. The fear, the anxiety, and the constant stress had been replaced with peace, hope, and resilience. Max curled up beside me, content, and I realized that sometimes life's greatest victories come not from revenge, but from justice, wisdom, and unwavering courage. Before the story ends, I want to say this to anyone watching: never let anyone intimidate you. Never let fear control your actions. Document wrongs. Seek help from those who understand the law, and never underestimate the power of persistence. Justice isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. Karen tried to steal, bully, and manipulate, but in the end, truth, courage, and resilience won. Max thrived, I reclaimed my peace, and our community learned that abuse of power has consequences, and that above all is a lesson I will carry forever. Sometimes Justice comes quietly, patiently, and when it hits, it's unstoppable. Never underestimate the power of truth.